Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Boss's Secret Baby by Crystal Monroe, narrated by Parker Everly and Alex Mortensen. Chapter 1. Isabel. 5 years ago. "Are you kidding me?" I cried out, staring at Ryan. He sat back in his chair, nonchalant as hell, looking like he hadn't just ripped my whole world apart. "Come on, babe. It's better this way." I shook my head. I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that Ryan had taken me out on a date night just to break up with me. Who arranges a breakup date? "How is it better?" I asked, trying not to let my voice tremble or to sound like I was going to cry. Which was exactly what I felt like doing. "We've been together for 2 years, and you're just throwing it all away." "I'm not throwing it all away, babe." He leaned forward, reaching for my hand over the table. "Don't call me that," I said, snatching my hand away before he could touch me. "You're dumping me. You can go right back to using my name." "Fine, Isabel," Ryan said, making my name sound like it tasted bad in his mouth. "I'm trying to be nice here, but you're not being very open to me right now." I barked a sarcastic laugh. "You're right. How thoughtless of me. I'll take notes so next time you dump me, I'm more gracious about it." He sighed. "Don't be like this." I crossed my arms over my chest. "I'll be however the hell I want. You don't get to make demands anymore." He shrugged. "Okay, sure. I guess you're right." Damn straight I was right. Ryan was dumping me. I suddenly realized there was no reason I had to be here. He'd said his piece. We were over. He'd already explained that he wasn't ready to make a commitment. There was nothing left for me to do or say here. I stood to leave. "Wait," Ryan said. "We're not going Dutch on the check?" My mouth dropped. "Get the check yourself, asshole," I said, and turned around, marching away from him. I bit back my sobs until I was out of the bar where we'd met and at least halfway down the road to the bus stop. When the tears finally rolled down my cheeks, a sob racked my throat. I fished for my phone and called June. "He dumped me," I sobbed into the phone. "What, Izzy? Oh my God." "I know," I said. "He invited me out for drinks. We had a beer, and then we ate that greasy pub food I love so much, and then he dumped me after we'd had a good afternoon together." "I can't believe it," June said. "I have to get Bernie into this call, too." I nodded, waiting for June to dial Bernadette into the call so we were on a three-way. My 2 best friends were saints, always there for me when shit hit the fan. And shit had just hit the fan in a big way. We were all in college together. I was in the art program, June studied communications, and Bernie was going to be a teacher, but we'd shared a dorm room the first year, and we'd been attached at the hip ever since. "Izzy, are you okay?" Bernie asked when she hopped on the line. "June told me before connecting me." "I'm fine," I lied. I felt like collapsing on the curb in a puddle of tears. "He doesn't deserve you," Bernie said fiercely. I stuck him with the check this time. We usually split it, I said. For some reason, I felt bad about doing that. But that was my problem. I was too nice. I always ended up getting walked over because I was nice and I didn't want people to go out of their way for me. So I ended up putting myself second all the time. I was a secondary character in my own story when I should have been the main character who took all the glory. And this just proved it. Not even Ryan wanted to be with me anymore. It's good you made him pay, June said. I wish you could have stuck it to him more. Really made his life hell somehow. Bernie agreed. I don't want to make his life hell, I said. I just want to move on. That wasn't going to be so easy. I was still fixated on Ryan. Hell, until half an hour ago, I hadn't even known anything was wrong between us. I was just starting my last year at college, and he finished last year. We'd been talking about moving in together, about seeing what the rest of our lives would hold. I'd been ready for the long haul with him. And he hadn't been able to see past today. I swallowed down a sob. Do you know what you need? June asked. A rebound, she added before I could guess. You need to get out there and get in bed with a hottie that will make you forget all about that idiot. Excellent idea. Don't waste any time on that loser, Bernie agreed enthusiastically. I don't know, you guys. I wasn't really the type to sleep around. I was a long-term relationship gal through and through. One-night stands weren't my thing. We should go out, Bernie suggested. We can drown your sorrows in alcohol. When you're too drunk to judge if the guy is hot enough to take home with you, we'll help you decide. She sounded triumphant. I'm working tonight, I said. I reached the bus stop and glanced at the other people waiting to get on board. There were only two. One had headphones in his ears and wouldn't hear my conversation. The other was reading a book. Come on, June groaned. Cancel your shift. I can't do that. Besides, I'm saving up money for... I didn't know how to finish that sentence. I'd been saving up money so that Ryan and I could get a place after college. Now that wasn't going to happen, but I would still need a place to stay, whether it was with him or not. My stomach turned and I felt sick. God, all of this was so unexpected and so unfair. The bus rumbled toward us. I have to go, I said. I'm working my shift and then I'm going to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. The girls protested about not being able to take me out for a short while longer, but then they gave in, and I ended the call. I climbed onto the bus, feeling numb, and I sat in one of the seats close to the back. I leaned my head against the window and watched the city slide by as the bus snaked through the streets of Los Angeles, taking me back to my student housing. My shift at Café Noir started at 5 and it ran until 1 in the morning. The cafe was a simple place during the day, offering food and artisan coffee. At night, we whipped out the cocktail menus and craft beers, and the crowd shifted from sensible daytime workers to raucous students. I liked working there. It always had a good vibe, and since I'd worked at the cafe almost as long as I'd been studying, it felt like a home away from home. Hey, Izzy, my coworker Jimmy said when I clocked in for my shift and he clocked out. Are you okay? You look... I'm okay, I said before he could finish his sentence. Just a tough week with classes and tests. You have some days off coming up soon, right? Then you can rest, he said. Yeah, that's a good point, I agreed, and he gave me a sympathetic smile before he left. I walked to the counter, ready to serve the customers coming in for the late afternoon rush, and tried not to think about Ryan at all. It would be no use if I cried into someone's coffee. That was just unprofessional. Time ticked on, and the orders changed from coffee to cocktails when the dinner orders started coming in. I worked hard, running back and forth, focusing on work so that I didn't have to think about anything else. My mind kept jumping to Ryan, and when I forced it away, I thought about what June and Bernie had suggested, a rebound. But I couldn't do that. Could I? I'd been in a 2-year relationship until today. I'd been thinking long-term. My mind had been on the future, not on the present, and not on getting my physical needs met. Instant gratification had been the last thing I'd wanted. I felt like the rug had been ripped out from under me. 2 black coffees, and the best stout you have on tap, a deep voice said. I looked up. Oh, my God. The bluest eyes I'd ever seen pierced me, and they were set in a face that could only have been carved by the angels. He was the epitome of tall, dark, and handsome, with tanned skin that made him look like he went for morning runs on the beach, broad shoulders, a confident attitude, and a grin on his face that made my stomach flutter. Coming right up, I managed to say, which was a damn miracle because the sight of Mr. Hot as Hell had made me feel all tongue-tied. I turned away from him and started preparing his order. 2 coffees and a stout. That was the order, right? Good thing he'd said it before I'd seen his face, because I wouldn't have heard a word he said. What was wrong with me? I didn't usually notice guys like this. But if they looked like him, I'm sure I would have looked twice, relationship or not. When I'd prepared the 2 coffees, I put them on the counter. He smiled at me, and my heart skipped a beat. Let me just get that beer, I said. He nodded, and I walked to the beer taps to pour the stout. I took the pint glass to the counter and put it down, calculating the price in my mind. He pulled out a handful of bills and smiled at me again. Cue the butterflies. Keep the change, he said. Thanks. Here you go, I said, offering him a tray for the coffee and the beer so that he wouldn't have to juggle them all. Thanks, he said. He flashed me that grin and walked away. The conversation had been simple, but I shivered, my stomach tightening again, and I watched him walk to a table with another man and a woman. My stomach sank a little. Was he taken? I snuck glances at him the rest of the night while I worked, watching the body language of his group. They were too far away from the counter for me to hear what they were saying, and as the evening picked up and I got busier, I could focus on them less and less. But at some point, the other man leaned over and kissed the woman, and I was oddly satisfied. They were a couple. Mr. Dreamy was a third wheel. Which didn't by any means tell me he was single. A man that attractive had to have a woman who was supermodel material. But still, a girl could hope. They stood and left, and my stomach sank again when the table was empty. I would have liked to at least talk to him again. But men like him didn't happen to women like me. Just as well. I didn't need to get hurt another time. It would have been nice, though, if at least one thing in my life worked out the way it did in the movies. Since I'd already lost my happy ending and all, I was due for some sort of good luck. I wiped down the counter while I waited for the next person to order. It was getting close to midnight and business was dying down. We were closing up soon, and then I just had to help clean up before I could go home. Someone walked up to the counter and cleared his throat. When I looked up, I froze. Once again, I was caught in the gaze of Mr. Blue Eyes.
Chapter 2. Carter. Fuck, she was cute. Not just cute, smoldering hot, too. But something about the way she looked at me, the way her mouth perpetually looked like it wanted to curl into a smile, made me want to talk to her. "Hi, Isabel," I said when she looked up at me, blinking like I was some kind of vision. She glanced down at her name tag, which was where I'd found out her gorgeous name. Then she looked back up at me. "Hi," she said. Can I get you something? I think our kitchen is closed, but—" She looked over her shoulder at the kitchen. She was flustered, and that made her even more attractive. And she was already a stunner, with red hair that hung over her shoulder, in light curls, and big, round brown eyes that made me want to fall into them. "Yeah," I said. "Your number." She blinked at me. "What?" "I'm a little forward," I said. "Sorry about that. You're just the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long, long time, and I can't pass up the opportunity to spend some time with you." She blinked at me before her cheeks flushed. "I'm not a thing," she bristled. I laughed. Oh, God, feisty too. She was the whole package. "I just told you you're beautiful, and all you heard was that I said, thing?" She shrugged. "I don't like being treated like the help." I laughed again. I wasn't trying to treat you like the help. Poor choice of words. You're the most beautiful woman I've seen in a long, long time. Is that better? She bit her lip, then nodded shyly. Shit, she already was driving me wild. I smiled. "And I do want to spend time with you. Would you like to have a drink with me?" She hesitated. "There's still time before you close, right?" I asked. "I'm not allowed to drink on the job," she said. "Who's going to know?" I asked. "We're the only ones left." When she looked around, she saw I was right. There weren't any other patrons left. Everyone had gone home for the night. It was 5 minutes to 12, and there was still time for her to pour another couple of beers. She turned it over in her mind. I could see her thinking, and it was hot as hell. "Okay," she finally said. I grinned at her. "Okay." She disappeared, and a moment later, she returned with 2 beers. We walked to the table where I'd sat with my college pal, Ray, and his girlfriend, Sonia. "So, Isabel," I said when we sat down. "Most people call me Izzy," she said. "The name tag is formal." She touched her fingers to the tag on her chest. "Izzy. Sassy. I liked it. I'm Carter." She smiled. "Hi, Carter." I smiled at the sound of my name on her lips. "So, Izzy, what do you do besides work here?" "I'm a student," she said. "Art major." I whistled through my teeth. "That's impressive." "Is it?" "For sure," I said. She looked shy under the compliment. I had a lot of respect for art students. It was a difficult career path. It was all about passion to them because most of them didn't make it far in the art world. Making money from something like that, no matter how passionate you were about it, was hard. "What about you?" she asked. "I finished college last year. I'm just wrapping up an internship now." "So, what's next for you then?" she asked. I took a swig of beer. "Business school." "Really?" I nodded. "I want to make a difference, but not in the way most people say they want to." "How then?" "Gourmet food." She laughed, and I was in trouble. I could get addicted to that sound. "Hey," I said, poking her lightly in the shoulder and loving the contact. "Good food brings people together, and it makes a profitable business, too." "I like your enthusiasm. Where's your school?" she asked. "New York." Was it my imagination, or did her face fall? I was flying out to New York City in 2 days to start graduate school. I'd worked hard to get where I was now, and I'd work even harder when I got to the Big Apple. "When are you leaving?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure if I should tell her. I didn't want to scare her off. "In 2 days." Her eyes widened. "Oh, that soon?" I nodded. Leaving was bittersweet. I loved L.A., but I needed to take this next step. An MBA would open a lot of doors for me, and I had big plans. "Well, I'm sure you'll do well in grad school," Izzy said. "It sounds like you're passionate about your future business." I nodded. "Absolutely. What's the point if there's no passion?" "Exactly," she said. "That's why I'm studying art, even though I know what most people say about it." "I think it's noble," I said. "What kind of art do you make?" "I'm a painter," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Ah, what do you like to paint?" "Anything," she said, playing with a lock of her fire-red hair. "Landscapes, abstract, but portraits are my favorite. I love people's faces. They always tell a story." She smiled at me. Her eyes were mesmerizing. I knew I was leaving soon, but I wanted to get to know her better. Something about her made me want to get closer, to find out what made her tick. "Are you single?" I asked. My question surprised me as much as it surprised her. "Yeah?" she said, and an expression flickered across her face too fast for me to read. "Lucky me," I said, and grinned at her. She laughed, and it was beautiful, rich and full and genuine. "Yeah, I guess you are." I took a sip of my beer. "So, what are you doing when you're not working at Café Noir or painting pictures?" "Being a full-time student and working take up most of my time," she admitted. "What are you doing tonight?" I asked. She shrugged. "After locking up and erasing all signs of my breaking the rules right now," she winked at me, "I'm probably going to go home and get a good night's sleep so that I'm up early for classes again tomorrow." "That's too bad," I said. "Why?" "Because I was hoping you would come out with me to celebrate." She blinked at me. "What are we celebrating?" "The fact that I met the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." I grinned at her and watched as she blushed bright red. "Oh, you are smooth, Carter, but meeting me is hardly cause for celebration." "Oh, Isabel," I said, leaning forward. "Have you seen you?" She blushed again, and I reached forward, touching her arm. I couldn't help myself. She was magnetic. "So, what do you say?" I asked. "When you're done here, do you want to come with me?" "Where are we going?" she asked in a breathy voice. "Wherever you want." For someone who looks so put together, I'd think you'd have an answer ready for that question, she said. I laughed. You think I look put together. Don't you? She asked. I mean, look at you. She slid her eyes over my body, and I relished the way she looked at me. You're definitely the type of guy to command a boardroom. I laughed. Is it that obvious that I'm a business major? I couldn't pass for a carpenter or a lumberjack. She raised her eyebrows. Seriously? A lumberjack? I can just picture you in flannels and boots, sizing up a tree, wondering how much you'll have to bribe it to fall over for you. I burst out laughing. Bribe it? Well, I can tell you work out, she said, blushing. But you don't have the calloused hands of someone who runs a chainsaw for a living. She reached for me and took my hand in both of hers. At the contact, electricity jumped between us, and my breath caught in my throat. She glanced up at me before studying my hand. I loved the feel of her hands on mine, her skin soft and smooth, and her fingers able. She had paint spots on her hands, and the blotches were endearing. I looked forward so that our heads were bowed together, studying my hand. So, you think I'll be better at closing deals than chopping down trees? I asked. My voice was a little hoarse. She glanced up at me again, and her face was so close to mine, I could see the flecks of gold dancing in those big brown eyes. Yeah, and it's better for the environment. I chuckled. I could smell her shampoo. I lifted my free hand and tucked her hair behind her ear. Her eyes were locked on mine, and when I leaned in to kiss her, she closed her eyes. When our lips touched, it was the same incredible electrical surge that pulsed through me as when she'd touched my hand. I slid my tongue into her mouth, and she moaned softly. The sound was erotic, and it made my cock stiffen in my pants. I cupped her cheek and kissed her more urgently, trying to show her the effect she was having on me. I moved my hands to her back, sliding them over her shoulders and up to her hair as I pulled her closer. Her arms wrapped around my shoulders. I inhaled her scent, intoxicated. When we finally broke apart to look at each other, she was out of breath, as if she'd run a mile, and her eyes were darker, deeper. Her lips were slightly parted. Come home with me, I said. She leaned back a little. Shit, did I blow it? I have to clean up and lock up the cafe, she said. I nodded. I'll help you. We stood together. All the other employees had gone home, and I helped her close up. We tipped the chairs onto the tables for the cleaning crew to come in the morning, wiped the counters down, and she switched on the large industrial dishwasher that someone had loaded earlier. The whole time, I couldn't stop staring at her. I watched her as she moved, keeping track of her as we worked. She was elegant and graceful, doing everything with care as if it really mattered. Her long red hair was like a flame as she moved beneath the dim lights. When she glanced at me now and again, her eyes were deep. Her expression suggested she was as eager about getting out of here as I was. When the shop was ready and she'd locked the door, she turned to me. I don't usually do this, she announced. What? Have help cleaning up the shop? She giggled. No, go home with someone I just met. It's not usually my style. Okay, I said. What if she changed her mind? I desperately needed her, but I didn't want to persuade her to do something she didn't want. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I am, but I just wanted you to know that. I nodded. Noted. I'm honored. She nodded too. So, which way? She asked. I took her hand and lifted it to my mouth, brushing my lips against her knuckles. This way, I breathed and led her to my car.
Chap.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?